So this weekend is the pre-release for High Seas, which means the newest class, Necromancer, Gravy Bones, and his endless hordes of undead allies are set to rise and swarm all over our tabletops. But if you're on the other side of the table, let's talk about how to chop down those allies and send them back to the depths from whence they came. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to the channel, and happy High Seas Friday. Pre-release is this weekend. Many of you probably have some cards in your grubby little paws already. But this is going to really kick it off, because remember, product can be sold differently this weekend, assuming, of course, that it's in stock. Product can be sold as per normal. And then with the official release next week, it's going to be pretty clear that the allies are going to be the Gravy Bones decks. You're going to be facing them. So what I wanted to do today was talk about kind of the other way, which is how to, a good reminder, it's been a while since we've consistently seen allies on the table, like a year and change at this point. It's right about a year since Dromai went out in the middle of heavy hitters season. So a little over a year. Now, I'm not going to go through specifically how allies and all of that work. There is a video that I've shot as part of the new player series, which I will link here, which goes through in pretty good detail the actual mechanics of attacking with allies, attacking them, and some interactions around that. So we won't be going through that in detail, but there are a few things that I want to make sure we have in context, because there's probably a lot of new players out there who haven't really dealt with allies in the truest sense so far. Now, a big topic of what we're going to be talking about today is hitting when it comes to allies. So what you see across the screen right now is a card we're all very painfully familiar with, maybe in a positive or negative sense, I suppose, but Snatch. So Snatch is a very simple card. It says, when this hits, draw a card. So when you are hitting, it can be hitting an ally, it can be hitting a hero, okay? You compare that, though, to Infect, which says when this hits a hero, create a Blood Rock Pox token under their control. Very, very, very clear to understand, very, very simple to understand, but it is important to note that when you're trying to get your things to trigger, there's hitting, and then there's hitting a hero. And there's a very important distinction to that as well. And again, in that video, that the Learn to Play, or the new player series video that I had referenced earlier, we go through a lot of nuance with Arcane, targeting, and all that sort of stuff. So please head on over to that if you're not familiar. Now, how this becomes relevant for our discussion about taking on allies is one of the things that, as a warrior player, I'm very excited that warriors are maybe getting, especially in the early, while everybody's trying to get Gravy Bones on the table and learn him, it's better eaten for warriors, right? So Dorinthea Ironsong is the OG warrior from WTR. And her whole shtick is using the Dawnblade to do multiple hits and put counters on the Dawnblade. So Dorinthea was very good into Dromai, or managed herself well into Dromai, because it was very difficult to get the counter off the Dawnblade. Because what Dorinthea can do is, on the first swing, she can go after an ally, chop that ally down, you've accomplished the hit, and then what you can do is, in that case, you've maintained at least at a minimum your counter. Because remember, with the Dawnblade, if you don't hit, and it doesn't say hero, so if you don't hit, you lose the counter. So what you do is you land a hit on an ally to maintain your counter, and then you come at them as a hero. Or maybe if they've got two allies on the table, you just go chop, chop, gain a counter. But you want to make sure that as Dorinthea, you're always chopping and maintaining that momentum, because then you can guarantee that counter stays on. And all of a sudden, I mean, there were many games that I played back in the Dromai era where I'd have 3 or 4 counters on the Dawnblade, and there's nothing they could do about it, because I'd be like, Dragon, swing 7, something like that, right? And then they're looking at 2 cards, maybe 3. They got to worry about my reacts. It was good eating. It was good eating. Doesn't mean it was 100% win rate or anything like that, but it was good eating for the Warriors, right? Because there's plenty of targets. You also have, there's plenty of dual swing Warriors where you can go a 2 or, hit on the backswing or whatever you need to do in order. There's a lot of, 1 and 2 health allies. That works pretty well for the dual swings. It's like chop, chop. And then you're not necessarily going after them, but you still fundamentally are able to go after the allies without spending a card to do so, right? You compare that to someone like even like assassins who have weapons. They really can only take out a 1 without having to use a card to do that, right? And I'm saying with one of their daggers. Or the guardians, they've got a big old hammer they can swing, but that's all that they're really doing. Unless you have like a zealous belting or something like that, you're not really threatening. So it becomes hard to get over. These dual swing warriors, or in the case of Dorinthea, who's a single swing warrior that can come twice, super effective. And she gets very strong if there are allies to eat. And I think the fact that Gravy Bones' allies can't come in one after the other like the way Jeremiah did, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good eating for Dorinthea, for Dawnblade Dorinthea, I should say, in the next upcoming weeks. The next set of heroes that are poised to do a little better within the meta. First off, Katsu obviously got some of his toys back, right? But Mask of Momentum, I think, is poised for a comeback here as well, because this is another case where this is only looking at hits. Now, keep in mind that this, right, Mask of Momentum is the third, when an attack action card you hit is the third or higher. So you do have to make sure that it's an attack action doing it, but you can backfill. So someone like Fi, this is actually not too bad for, because they have to worry about basically not letting you land any, because if they have allies out there, you can very strategically ensure that you can land your third hit. And Fi with his Phoenix Flame or something like that becomes essentially a free 1 if they've got one out there on the table, and then really worrying about card draw on top of that as well. Now, someone like Aria is actually really well poised for this as well, because she's got Kadachi for 1, Kadachi for 2. In theory, they could both go into the same dragon. Or, sorry, not the same, sorry, see, I was back in old habits. They could go into the same ally, or you come at them for 1. They have to inefficiently block, because then they know that you're going to go ally or something like that, and then do your card draw. This probably is, for Aria, who's not necessarily always looking to go super wide, this isn't maybe quite as advantageous as it is for something like a Fi or even a Syndra. But there's a lot of options here with having Mask of Momentum, always threatening that, and your opponent really just can't let basically anything hit them as the hero, because they know you're always going to have something to land into their ally and potentially trigger your card draw. Now, if we move over to Syndra, I think Syndra is in a really great place, because obviously she wants to do what she wants to do with her kunais and her flicks anyway. And as we're very familiar with Syndra, right, she can come in, as long as you land a hit, the next one, even if they block it, you can flick and keep the link alive. Well, it's going to be it's going to be incredibly difficult as a player of allies to be able to keep Syndra off of Mask. It's going to be incredibly difficult. And especially when you consider that there's a lot of cards she can do where she can throw the attack action at them and still flick knives at you being the opponent being the hero. I do want to point out one thing with Flick Knives. Flick Knives specifically says at the hero, so you cannot flick a dagger. You can't flick a dagger in this case at a ally. So you would be landing your attacks into the allies just like from a straight up point of view. But again, trying to keep them off of Mask of Momentum with allies on the table, going to be very difficult, because a lot of the times, you don't. It feels inefficient to go after the allies. You absolutely need to chop them and blow them down. Like, there is zero question. That's the whole point of this whole discussion, right? Is utilizing those allies to try and get back what you're losing by going after the allies, right? But having dual swing and go again in the case of the warriors we talked about, or in the case of our ninjas. And again, you compare that to like a guardian swinging a hammer, and that's all they've got. That's a lot different. So it should be very interesting to see how the meta shifts here, assuming that Necromancer is going to be popular, which I think we agree it's going to be. It should be very fun for these next, couple of weeks until things flush themselves out at the minimum for our warriors and for our ninjas, trying to figure this out. So very much looking forward to that. Now, a couple things I do want to remind you on. I'm not doing the full recap, right? But what you see across the screen right now is just a quick reminder of how the Kadachis, for example, work. This is obviously a case of Dromai, who's, it's not exactly one-to-one with what you would expect to see with the Necromancer allies. But you can see here that you can very intelligently set up a way to do board clearing while also threatening mask trigger and having plenty of ways to come at them. And, in this case, these are all Ash Wings for 1. But again, you could land multiple attacks into the same, if you had like a big beefy boy out there, you could land multiple attacks into the same ally if you needed to, just to get them off the table. So lots of different ways we can go there. So as I move to close this one out, again, I just want to be very clear. There's a lot of classes that have kind of been on the sideline that I'm really excited to see what all of this means for them going forward. So let me know what else you're excited about. What other classes, what other archetypes do you think might be in a better potential position here with the necromancers and the undead hordes hitting our tables? So let me know, my friends. Nothing else. Enjoy your pre-release this weekend and go Commando.